An FBI agent approached the prison warden stating that they wanted to transfer Michael. But if Michael left, who would fix Tush Mayan for him? The warden firmly refused. However, the FBI agent didn't let it go. Left with no choice, the agent revealed the truth, handing the warden a confidential document. A young man lay heroically in a pool of blood. What had caused such a strong reaction from the warden? Meanwhile, Michael had no idea what was happening. The four of them hid in a warehouse calculating their escape plan. Michael's eyes, full of intelligence, quickly scanned the prison gang leader John. After returning, the warden sat in his office waiting for him. At this critical moment, the four countries were leaking information. If they were discovered, it would be the end. Michael was extremely anxious, as if sitting on a bed of coals. The warden informed Michael, "It seems you've been hiding something from me. Tomorrow you'll be transferred." Michael pleaded with the warden, "My brother has only 3 weeks left before his execution. Let me stay with him during this remaining time." The warden, finding it difficult to even protect himself, felt conflicted. He then said, "It's not me who wants to transfer you, but your opponent has more power than I do." He told Michael to pack his things and prepare for tomorrow's transfer. Lincoln was devastated when he learned that Michael would be transferred the next day. He had endured so much, counting down the days with hope, only for it all to turn into despair. Michael patted him on the shoulder and said, "Believe that I can do this." He then approached John, asking him to come up with a way to get the warden's office key. During roll call, John instructed his men to create a distraction and used a bar of soap to imprint the shape of the key. Amid the chaos, John managed to get the soap, then used heat to melt and mold it, successfully completing the task. Michael then sought out Westmoreland, asking if there was any way to avoid being transferred. Westmoreland replied, "The most direct way is to file a request for a temporary injunction. According to a certain regulation, before your brother's execution you can't be transferred. The entire process would take 30 days. The request was handed over to Bellick, who delivered it to the warden. In the cell, Michael quickly asked Sucre to help him climb into the secret tunnel to explore and familiarize himself with the layout. Michael glanced at the tattooed map on his body for a moment. Then he pressed a button to start the stopwatch. After finding the exit on the roof, and just as he was about to return, a maintenance worker suddenly entered. Michael had no choice but to climb to the top and hide. The worker, still in Michael's line of sight, was puffing away on a cigarette, filling the air with smoke. Since Michael had been gone for so long, Sucre was also growing anxious, his heart racing. Michael's situation became quite difficult because the layout of the hidden passage was unfamiliar to him. He was almost discovered by the maintenance worker, who appeared unexpectedly. Fortunately, thanks to his strong will, he managed to escape. After returning to the cell, he told Sucre that he had confirmed the escape route leading to the roof. Michael then diligently went to the warden's office, focusing both on finding a way to escape and fixing the Tush Mayan. Soon it was time for the warden to leave for the day, but Michael's water sealant hadn't dried or set yet. If he let go now, the model would collapse completely. The warden had no choice but to leave for home first, allowing Michael to continue working. As soon as the warden left, Michael let go and quietly opened the door to check. He saw the guards chatting away with the secretary, gesturing animatedly. John immediately arrived to assist, using the fake key to unlock the door. Taking the opportunity, Michael blended in with the crowd, keeping an eye on his wristwatch, then returned to his cell. He quickly asked Sucre to join him and support his plan. Once again, Michael entered the secret passage from the cell and followed the route up to the roof. After climbing onto the roof, he carefully timed his moves, crouching down to avoid the searchlights that swept back and forth from a distance. The scene then shifted to the warden returning home, only to find 2 FBI agents waiting for him. They had been there for a while and demanded that the warden immediately hand over Michael's petition. Standing next to his wife, they made it clear with their actions. Despite wanting to keep Michael, the warden had no choice at that moment. The petition was fed into the shredder, and Michael's plan to delay the transfer crumbled once again. Meanwhile, Captain Bellick was making his rounds, inspecting the cells. When he reached Michael's cell, he was shocked to find that Michael wasn't there. A warden was alerted. Michael, who was on the roof, heard the warning echoing around. The searchlights were sweeping back and forth, and the guards and dogs were searching the yard below. The prisoners inside the cells were shouting. Just then a voice came over the guard's radio. "Cancel the alarm, Captain. I know where Michael is. He's in the warden's office." So Bellick sent someone to check. The guard immediately opened the door, but this time there was trouble. No one was in the room. Michael hid on the roof, unfazed, carefully observing the route and calculating the perfect timing. All the streets were busy with cars except for one, which was eerily quiet, with not a single soul in sight. His deep and intelligent eyes surveyed everything. Meanwhile, the warden was feeling guilty for hiding the truth from his wife about the young man who fell in a pool of blood. He secluded himself in a chapel praying for forgiveness. A priest approached and the warden confided in him about the events of that year, expressing his hope that his wife would forgive him. The priest offered comfort, hoping the warden could free himself from this burden. The warden could barely bear the weight of his sorrow. As guards searched for Michael in the secret passage, the warden received a notification from Bellick and immediately returned to his office. Upon opening the door, he was startled to find Michael suddenly in the room. When Bellick saw him, he angrily said, "You've made everyone run around in circles looking for you." But the warden stopped Bellick from giving Michael a hard time since he was set to be transferred the next day. Hearing the warden's words, Michael lost control and pleaded, "Please, I just need a little more time. Just a little more." Back in his cell, Bellick ordered Michael to pack his belongings for immediate transfer. Is this where the great Michael's life ends? Michael quietly slipped a polished hex screwdriver under Sucre's pillow, leaving behind a paper crane as a signal. As Bellick escorted him, they passed by the yard where John angrily ordered his men to inform his wife to flee quickly. From a distance, Michael saw his brother and, filled with regret, whispered, "I'm sorry." The warden watched from afar as well. Just as Michael was about to be handed over, the warden courageously intervened again. He explained to the guards that Michael's petition had only been submitted the day before and lied, saying that due to Michael's health it was not suitable to transfer him at the moment. Finally, the warden cast a defiant glance toward the distance. The FBI agents had been watching for some time. In the end, the warden successfully prevented Michael's transfer, keeping him in Fox River. Today, in the final secret tunnel, Michael reached the last wall and carefully examined it from top to bottom. Step by step he moved forward, marking the distance as he walked and the height according to the tattoo on his shoulder. Each of his actions showed just how terrifyingly meticulous this man was. Every tattoo was being used with precise purpose. Michael's sharp gaze reappeared once again. In the prison cell, Sucre was alone and he was startled because the police were in the room, but Michael wasn't on the bed. Just as the officer was about to open the door and enter, Michael lifted his head, scaring both the police officer and his cellmate. After the officer left, Michael complained about the frequent roll calls, saying it left him no time to complete his work on the wall. Sucre came up with a plan, suggesting they cause a riot in the yard which would get them locked up for a day. That way the police wouldn't come around and there would be no roll calls. Meanwhile, Bagwell, who had been manipulated by John, hadn't appeared for 2 episodes. The day he boldly returned, his comrades welcomed him with a special gift. His pant pocket was pulled out again, and for 3 seconds he felt some sympathy for his underling. To create a riot in the yard, Michael returned to the secret path. Once again he climbed the electrical route and sabotaged the air conditioning wires. As a result, all the rooms in the prison started heating up. Bagwell started causing chaos in the prison room, forcing the guards to deal with the situation. Sucre, still in the cell, complained to Michael, telling him that not only did he sabotage the air conditioning wires, but he also turned on the heater. The metal prison hallways opened up and Bagwell was the first to step out. He taunted the officer, saying, "Isn't it hot enough in here? Just yesterday I was still pale and look at me now." The officer splashed a bowl of water in Bagwell's face and sarcastically asked, "Cool enough for you now?" Bagwell shot back, "If there were a cool breeze here we'd head right back in immediately." Because of this remark, everyone in the cell block was locked up together. Bagwell's fellow inmates saw him as their leader and followed his actions. The riot plan Michael had set in motion was about to begin, with Bagwell's group joining in. All the prisoners were confined together, but Bagwell's group, due to their lack of cooperation, were locked up separately in a cage. At this point, Bellick started insulting Bagwell with cruel words, successfully provoking his crazy ambition. Bellick felt a surge of excitement and kept taunting him. Under Bagwell's command, his team became extremely agitated, using their strength to tear down the wire doors of the cage. One moment Bellick had been smug, but now, seeing the chaos unfold, he hurriedly rushed back to his office. After the metal doors were broken, the cell block was immediately overtaken. Bellick opened all the prison cells and all the inmates ran outside. Westmont's cat was also frightened and ran around in chaos. Bagwell found a set of keys in the control room, which made him even more excited. It turned out that a guard had dropped them in a panic. The riot in the prison grew larger and larger. Bellick called for backup. In Block B, Sarah was checking on patients. A guard on the phone told her that Block A had been overtaken. Sarah hurried back to her room. The guard outside the door was attacked by a prisoner who strangled him. When Sarah went outside and saw what had happened, she quickly turned back but was grabbed by a prisoner. She resisted and hurriedly escaped to the medical room, pushing a table against the door to block it. The patient who had been ill just moments earlier was now glaring at her. Sarah, frightened and panicked, couldn't run anymore. She could only wait for help to arrive. In another scene, the guards were escorting Lincoln back to his cell when they encountered the ringleader of the riot, Bagwell. The guards were terrified, and in the confusion Lincoln grabbed the set of keys and unlocked his handcuffs. But before Lincoln could make a move, Belloc hit him from behind, knocking him unconscious. Meanwhile, back in the secret passage, Michael told Sucre, "Once we get past this wall we'll be able to reach the water pipe, then get into the medical room and escape." Michael pulled out a map he had drawn and hung it on the wall, showing Sucre that as long as he followed this important path and crawled into the tunnel they could weaken the wall's structural integrity. Sucre, still unsure, thought back to what he had told Michael, that if he was included in the escape plan he'd agree to break through the tunnel at any cost. In the medical room, Sarah could not wait for help to arrive. She saw a guard being forced by a prisoner who shouted outside, "Everything is normal in here." The prisoners outside continued to smash the protective glass around the prison. The police chief, reluctant to use force, decided to cut off the water supply. Just then the governor called and he immediately asked about Sarah, his daughter. The police chief, unaware of the situation in the prison, insisted that Sarah was fine as Block B was completely separate from Block A. At that moment Bagwell was holding onto the guard he had beaten, enjoying the cheers of his fellow inmates. The poor guard, hoping to escape amid the chaos, was shoved into Michael's cell by Bagwell. In the process the guard accidentally bumped into a washing faucet in the room, revealing the secret passage. Bagwell was about to turn back and yell when John covered his mouth to stop him. Seeing this, Michael got excited and rushed back to the cell. Bagwell said the guard had seen the entrance to the tunnel and couldn't be allowed to live. Michael argued that the guard couldn't die and John supported him. Bagwell shook his head and left the cell. John stepped forward to block him, demanding that Bagwell join their escape plan. Otherwise he would go mad and reveal everything before they killed him. Michael didn't want the plan to be ruined and reluctantly accepted Bagwell's demand, but under the condition that the guard must live. Suddenly a prisoner rushed out shouting, "A nurse is about to be caught." Hearing this, Michael dashed out to check the prison cameras and saw Sarah struggling alone. He then climbed through the secret passage to the roof and spotted Sarah in Block B signaling for help.